everyone, it's Karen here again today, and I am sharing with you a really nice simple gift tutorial that you can make for that crafty arty friend in your life for Christmas. The tutorial that I'm sharing with you today is an embroidery hoop tutorial. Now I know, just bear with me. Embroidery is not as difficult as you think, and I really love to work stitches into my work wherever I can. So these cute little hoops are only 4 inches, and I promise the most beginner noob will be able to manage one of the tutorials at least. I have 2 for you with different types of hoops. One is working with a stamped image where we use our stitches to accentuate the image that we stamp onto our fabric, and the second one is using some straight stitches, really simple and slightly more complicated French knots. It wouldn't be a Karen tutorial without some found words, so I'm using dictionary definitions today for my work, and I'm also working with the Brushos pigment powders. I really love these and they work out so well on fabric. So before we get to the tutorial, I have 2 things that I would like to ask of you. Number 1 is to subscribe to my channel. You can do so by clicking the box below with my face on it, and you will be able to keep update with all of my videos that are to come. Number 2 is I would really love it if you would consider supporting me on Patreon. I'm now on Patreon, and you can find a link below in the description box to my Patreon page. This plan's starting from as little as $2 a month, where you can buy me coffee, and if you really like my content, I would love it if you consider supporting me. Thanks so much for watching. So let's go ahead and get started with our tutorial. I'm going to be showing you 2 different types of embroidery hoops to make for this little project, and I think they make really beautiful gifts. You can really make them so special and customized for the person that you're going to be making them for. So for those of you who do have a few embroidery skills at your fingertips, we're going to be doing one which has some lovely little French knots on it. They're really not that hard, and I'll definitely put a link to a really great tutorial from Sublime Stitching. She does the best one that I've ever seen, so I would definitely try and give it a go. But we'll also be doing one with a stamp as well, and we'll be using the stamp as our design, and we'll be embroidering around it. So don't worry, whichever level you're at, I've got you covered. So I've got 4-inch hoops here, so they're just going to be little small ones. Perfect for a quick little gift that you need to knock out quite fast. I have got just some cotton material. This is just kind of an off-white colour. So whatever, I picked this up in the remnant bin, it wasn't expensive, so it really doesn't matter. Cotton is definitely best for this technique because it absorbs it much more easily. I've got 2 little quotes that I cut out from my dictionary just here. You can pick up these dictionaries in secondhand shops and thrift stores all over the place. I like this one because the text is really quite bold and the colour of the paper is really nice. It's quite nice and aged. So this is definitely my go-to when I'm going to be cutting out definitions. So I have 2 definitions. I have got create and I have got bloom. So bloom will go really nice with our flowers, and create I'm going to kind of go for a little bit more of an abstract one because we'll be using the stamps for that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pop my fabric into my hoops. So I have the 2 hoops here, the 2 pieces of fabric. I haven't bothered to iron them. I'll see at the end, I might give them a quick going over with the iron. We'll see how they look once I've got the water on them. It might not need it. So all you need to do is just pop in your fabric to your hoop and then make sure that it's nice and tight. We'll be adjusting it again because as it gets wet it will shift slightly and become a little bit more loose. So just tighten it up. Make sure when you're cutting your fabric that you've got plenty of room to work with. We'll cut around it at the end. You'll want your fabric in the hoop when you're working on this because it will keep it nice and taut and the colour will go on much easier. It doesn't matter too much the straightness of it because we can adjust it once we're finished. Just try and keep it as nice and tight as you can. You want it to be kind of like a drum, so it's nice and easy to work with. So there are our 2 hoops ready. So we'll just put one to one side. So you need some water for this technique, some clean water, and I have got my Brushos here. I really love to work with the Brushos from Colourcraft. I think they are just a gorgeous product to use, and I use them quite a bit. If you don't have Brushos, you can still do this technique with watercolours. You'll just need to know that the watercolour, when it goes on, it's not as pigmented as the Brusho will be, so you might need to go over your design a few times. If I was doing this with watercolours, I would wet the fabric first and then put the watercolour paint on it, leave it to dry, see how it looks, because the watercolour will always dry in a lighter shade, so you might need to go over it with a couple of layers, but you can absolutely work around if you don't have the Brushos. If you do have the Brushos though, they're a really gorgeous product to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick out some colours of Brushos that I want to work with. So because I'm going to be going with bloom and I'm going to be adding in some flowers, I'm going to go with some green for the background. So I have a lime green here, I have a leaf green, moss green, and I have an olive green. So I will probably go, I know that the moss green is a nice light colour and the leaf green is slightly darker, so I think I'll go with that. And I also have a little bit of yellow ochre in here. So these are the colours I'm going to go with for now. So I have a little pin in the top of my Brushos. It means that I can shake out the powder that's inside here nice and easily, and with a bit more control than I can if I open up the containers, but you can use however you want. I just have the names written on the front of them because I got too annoyed taking them out and trying to find which one it was, so it's just easier for me to have the name on it. So I'm going to work from the inside out with this one, so you want to get your piece of fabric nice and wet, so just plenty of water on there. And we'll be putting water again on there, so I will start, I think, with the leaf green because I think this will be my lightest one, and we'll just shake it over. And we'll add in some moss green. And then I'll just add in more water, and you can see all of the colours start to bleed out now. It's just gorgeous. So don't be afraid to put quite a bit of water on it because it really gets the powders activated. And what you will find when it dries is it does actually dry quite a bit lighter than you think. So I'm just going to pull out some of the colour right to the edge. So you really don't need a lot of Brushos. They go quite far. And I like the little specks in the background. I think they look really nice. Let's pop a little bit of yellow ochre on. And I might add in some of the lime green. So I'm really not painting at all, I'm just dabbing the brush on top. So because I know I'm going to have flowers going up, I'm trying to create a little bit of a horizon line for myself and just pull the darker colour upwards as well so that it will look like there's a background when we add in our flowers. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it to one side to dry, and like I said, it will dry quite a bit lighter, so just leave it to fully dry completely before you come back to it and decide that maybe you might want to add in a little bit more, and before we do our embroidery we'll want to make sure that this is completely dry. I would recommend letting it air dry because I just wouldn't want to take the heat gun to it with it being fabric and all. I wouldn't want to kind of damage the fabric or anything. So the best thing you can do is just completely leave it to dry, air dry. It should be dry within about 30 minutes or so. So we'll do the other one now. So just pop this one to one side. So for this one, I definitely want to go with a much brighter, warmer palette. So what do we have? I might go with the yellow and a rose red. I know I want to stamp on top of this, so I don't want to go too dark because I'm going to be using some black stays on to stamp my image on top of this. So I'm going to go with an orange, a yellow and a rose red. So again, I'm just going to make my fabric nice and wet. My yellow first. Some orange. And again, just pull it out to the edge so that you have a nice border. And I'll add in a little bit of red. So again, I'm just dabbing on top to just get those powders into the fabric. And if you think it's getting a little bit too dark, you can just pop a spot of water and it will just dissolve the colour right across the page. So again, with the other one, I will leave it to dry and we will come back to start adding in our embroidery once they're completely dry. Okay, so my two hoops are now dry. The backgrounds, as I said, they faded a little bit, but they still maintained a lot of the strength of the colour, so I'm really pleased with them. So the first one that I'm going to be working on is my green one here, and we're going to be doing a really simple embroidery technique on the hoop, and we're going to come up with something really pretty. So I'm just going to pop this one over to one side. So I've gathered a few different colours of embroidery floss. I have some different colours of green, and I have some different colours for my flowers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got my needle threaded and I have got three threads of the skein in here. So it's 3 of the little thin threads because I wanted to have a thicker one, and I've just tied a really simple knot in here. So if you're not up with embroidery, this is something really simple that you can tackle yourself, absolutely. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some long stitches, long straight stitches, just in kind of a random pattern with the different colours of floss that I've picked out in the green. So just really simply, I'm just going to start from the beginning at the centre. So again, just make sure that your fabric is nice and tight. Pull it a bit more taut if you need to. And I'm just going to come up roughly how long I want my flower stems to go. And I'm just going to work in a random order, just varying the heights of my stitches. It doesn't matter if they're not exactly straight, it's really not that vital. And if you do end up with it being a little bit off center, that's okay, because we can take it out and rotate it around in the hoop if we need to. So I'm going to fast forward this bit and I'll show you at the end what I'm left with. So I'm just going to take the different colours and I'm just going to fill up a line here with some stems. Okay, so I've finished my hoop. As you can see there, I've just varied the length of the stitches and the different colours. It's not in a perfect straight line, which is what I was going for, so I'm looking for the effect of like a bunch of flowers growing in a field. So now I'm going to attempt to show you how to do a French knot. Now, Embroidery 101, this definitely isn't, so I'm going to link below in the description box and on my blog post to a really great tutorial by Sublime Stitching. She has a really fantastic tutorial on how to do a French knot, but it's like a lot of these things, you think it's harder than it actually is, but when you haven't got the hang of it, and until you get the hang of it, it's the most pain in the butt thing you'll ever do. So I am going to zoom in and attempt to show you how to do some French knots. Okay, so for the French knots, I have got my needle and I have got 2 skeins of embroidery thread in here, as opposed to the 3 that I had for my grass. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up just at the top of one of the flowers. And then the key with French knots is to wrap the thread around the needle, not the needle around the thread. So you want to keep your needle quite straight, and you're just this is kind of tricky, keeping it in frame as well. So 1, 2, 3 times around the needle. Keep the thread quite taut, pull it down towards the end of the needle and pop the needle in very close to where you came out, and then just pull your knot and straighten your needle. Keep this thread quite out to the side, pull it down, and you've got your little French knot there. Okay, so not as hard, I promise. So I'm just going to vary that, so just try and show you one more time. I might just zoom out a little bit. Ooh. Okay, so needle comes up, pull the thread to one side, keep it nice and taut. That's really the key for a French knot, is keeping the tension nice. Pop your needle under your thread, so your thread is going here, so your needle goes under, and you're going to wrap it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and pull it, just bunch it all up together, really close to where you started, but not in the same hole. Pull it nice and tight, so you have the little bunch of thread there, and then just pull the needle straight through it. And there we have our French knots. So like I said, I'll link in the description box to the tutorial by Sublime Stitching. She does a really great one, but definitely where I was for sure going wrong with my French knots before I got the hang of it was I was attempting to wrap the needle around the thread rather than the thread around the needle, so I was moving my needle all the time. It wasn't keeping my stitches on the needle, so it was really tricky. So I'm going to go ahead and fill across with the different colours that I have here, and I'll definitely fast forward this bit for you guys. Okay, so I finished adding all of the French knots to my little flowers, and I think they look really, really sweet. You can see all the different colours there that I put along. I really, really like it. So I'm just going to pop this one to one side and we're going to work on our other hoop. So for the other hoop, I had said that we were going to stamp an image and we were going to do some very simple embroidery on there. So I've taken my fabric out of my hoop just to make it easier for me to stamp the image on. I'm going to be using some black stays on because it's a permanent and it should give me a nice ink onto the fabric. And I've picked out from my many stamps, I've picked out these ones here. They are button stamps. So these stamps are by Papermania Do Crafts. I'm not sure if these guys are outside of the UK and Ireland. I don't know if they're international or not, or how international they are, but you'll get the idea of it. So what I thought would be fun would be to stamp the buttons onto the fabric and then to use the embroidery thread to stitch across where you would if you were sewing the button onto the fabric. So I thought that would look really fun to have a few of them around there. So I have got a few different ones here that I will definitely be using. So we'll start off. I'll take, I think, I will take the larger one. And I'll just stamp it onto my fabric. And just make sure you get plenty of ink on this. So just think about, I think I want to have my buttons going around like this. So don't put it too close to the edge, because if you're going to be pulling your fabric, it will distort it a little bit, and if it's too close to the edge it might go inside the hoop. Stamping my buttons here now, and I popped it back into the hoop. I adjusted it slightly so that I had it in a way that I liked. Now I think what would be really nice for this is to maybe add in a few buttons if you have them around, just to kind of build up a little bit of depth. I'm going to have a look around after I finish this to see if I can find some, because I know I have buttons somewhere, but do you think I can find them right now? No, of course not. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch. So I'm just going to take a contrasting colour, just ones that I had left over from my flower one that I just finished. I think some really fun buttons around the edge would look really nice. So I'm just going to sew them as if I was sewing a real button. Okay, so I've finished off the stitching on my buttons there, and as I said, if you've got a few wee buttons, you can pop them in around here. I think they would look really pretty, just to add a little bit of extra dimension to your embroidered hoop. So we've got our two versions here, one with a little bit of embroidery, and I hope you will try those French knots because they're really not as hard as you think that they are, and then one with a much simpler one using a stamped image. So if you don't have a stamped image of a button, you could definitely put a whole pile of buttons on here, or you could use any other stamped image that you have that you think would be accentuated by some embroidery stitches, some really simple stitches, even around the edges of different things would look really, really nice. So I have my definitions here, and what I've done is I've just popped a little bit of double-sided tape on the back of them. I'm going to be stitching them onto my piece, but I just wanted to have something a little bit extra to add them on, so just pop that one on there, and I have my create one here. Just pop that down here, I think. And then I have some black thread, and I'm just going to put a really simple little X in the corner of each side to just hold the words down and just give it a little bit more of a stitched feel to it. So when you're stitching into paper, remember you can only do it once, you can't do it multiple times, so make sure that you're happy with where the positioning is. So I always like to come up first on the fabric side. So just like a little cross stitch, so I'll just bring it across here. I'll just mark where my hole is going to be so that I can feel for it on the other side. So just tie that off really simply. And I'm going to do the same for this side on this way, and I'll do the other one as well. So here we have our two finished hoops, and I really am in love with them, especially this one. I think it turned out really, really pretty. So I've just stitched the corners of the definitions onto each hoop, just in a very imperfect cross stitch, so it just adds a little bit of dimension with the paper as well and ties in the stitched effect. I think the Brushos really look lovely on the fabric. They've kept their vibrancy much more than I have had experience with watercolours. So to finish off my gifts, normally when I'm doing the embroidery hoops, all I will do is I will trim around the edge here. I will take a running thread and pull it, and then I will just glue gun some felt to the back there, and that's them finished off. And when you fold it all up, you'll see them. They're just really, really pretty, and a really nice little gift that you can give to your friends. So I hope that you're inspired to create a mixed media embroidery piece, and if you are, let me know. I would love to see them. So be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. I've got lots more planned for December and lots more tutorials to come. So we'll see you then. Thanks so much. Bye.